Welcome to the channel Rare Coin Finder, and today we are diving into something so extraordinary, so jaw-dropping, so unbelievable that by the time this video ends, you are going to sprint to every coin jar, every old drawer, every forgotten wallet in your house because what I am about to show you might already be in your possession, and you would never even know it. Picture this: a perfectly ordinary-looking coin, silver and round, just like 1,000 others you have held in your lifetime, sitting quietly in someone's change jar, completely ignored, completely overlooked, gathering dust while its true value silently climbs into territory that would make your head spin. That coin is the 1998 P. Kennedy $50, and what makes it so dangerously special is not just what it looks like, it is what the collectors know about it that the rest of the world does not. And by the end of this video you will know too, so do not click away, because this is the kind of information that could literally change your financial life forever. Now, before we go any further, let me hit you with the number that started this whole obsession, because the 1998 P. Kennedy $50 has been linked to an extraordinary collector valuation of a staggering $257 million. And yes, you heard that absolutely correctly, and no, this is not a typo, and yes, your jaw is allowed to drop right now, because that is the kind of number that separates ordinary coins from legendary ones. And this coin, this beautiful, misunderstood, criminally underappreciated piece of American minting history, has earned every single cent of that reputation. So let us go back, way back to 1998, a year that most people remember for Y2K panic building on the horizon, for the internet exploding into everyday life, for the world feeling like it was shifting beneath everyone's feet, and right there, in the middle of all that cultural chaos, the Philadelphia Mint was hard at work striking Kennedy $50 with a level of precision and a level of rarity that nobody fully appreciated at the time. The Philadelphia Mint, identified by that now iconic P mintmark, produced these coins with a specific die configuration, a specific metal composition, and in certain cases with micro-level anomalies in the striking process that transformed what should have been a common circulation coin into something that numismatists, that is the fancy word for serious coin collectors, would spend decades hunting down. What makes the 1998 P so special starts with its mintage, the total number of coins produced, because while the government struck millions of $50 that year, the number of surviving specimens in high-grade condition, we are talking MS-67, MS-68, even the rare MS-69 on the Sheldon grading scale, is devastatingly, heartbreakingly small. You see, most of these coins went directly into circulation, getting scratched, worn, banged around in registers and pockets and vending machines, losing their luster, losing their detail, losing the very qualities that make a coin valuable to a serious collector. The ones that survived, the ones that were somehow set aside, somehow preserved, somehow kept away from the brutal wear of everyday commerce, those are the coins that command the kind of prices that make auction rooms go completely silent. And then there is the question of errors, because the 1998 P. Kennedy $50 has been associated with a fascinating range of die varieties and striking anomalies that add another entire layer of complexity and value to an already rare coin. Certain specimens have shown doubling on the obverse, a subtle, almost ghostly secondary image on Kennedy's portrait that only the trained eye can detect, but that the trained eye absolutely cannot ignore once it has been seen. Others have exhibited what collectors call a weak strike on the reverse eagle's tail feathers, a minting imperfection that sounds like a flaw but is actually, in the twisted and beautiful logic of numismatics, a feature, a marker of authenticity, a fingerprint of that specific production run that separates genuine rarities from ordinary examples. The history of Kennedy $50 itself adds tremendous emotional weight to every single coin in this series, because John F. Kennedy was not just a president, he was a symbol, a moment in time, a wound in the American consciousness that never fully healed, and when Congress authorized the Kennedy $50 just weeks after his assassination in 1963, they were not just making a coin, they were making a monument, a piece of portable grief and pride that Americans would carry with them for generations. Every Kennedy $50 minted since that day carries that weight, that history, that emotional resonance, and the 1998 P carries it in a particularly profound way because it represents a coin series that had already been running for 35 years, maturing into something more than currency, evolving into history you can hold in your hand. Collectors have chased verified high-grade examples of the 1998 P through estate sales, through inheritance lots, through old bank rolls that sat untouched in safety deposit boxes for decades. Each discovery sending ripples of excitement through the numismatic community because every new find tells the same impossible story that extraordinary treasure has been hiding in plain sight this entire time. And listen, if you think the 1998 P. Kennedy $50 at $257 million is enough to make your brain short-circuit, I need you to stay right here with me, because the coins still coming up in today's video are going to absolutely destroy your expectations. We have got 4 more Kennedy half-dollars waiting in the wings, each one with a story more shocking than the last, each one with a value that somehow manages to climb even higher than the one before it. And trust me when I tell you that what is coming next is the kind of revelation that will have you tearing through your entire house looking for coins before this video even finishes, so do not go anywhere. Do not touch that back button, because we are just getting started and the best is absolutely yet to come. Next, the 1994 P. Kennedy half-dollar, and if you thought the last coin was enough to make your pulse race, what I am about to tell you is going to hit you like a freight train, because this coin, this seemingly innocent, quietly unassuming piece of American minting history, has been valued by serious collectors at an almost incomprehensible $262 million. And before you even have a chance to process that number, I need you to understand that we are not talking about a coin that looks special. We are not talking about a coin that screams rare from across the room. We are talking about something that could be sitting in a coffee can in your grandmother's kitchen right now. Something that could have passed through your fingers 100 times without a single alarm bell going off. And that is precisely what makes the 1994 P. Kennedy half-dollar one of the most dangerously overlooked treasures in the entire history of American numismatics. Cast your mind back to 1994, a year crackling with cultural electricity. A year when the internet was beginning to creep into everyday households. When the world felt like it was standing on the edge of something enormous. When America itself was in the middle of a decade defined by restless energy and relentless change, and right there in the heart of Philadelphia, inside the walls of one of the most storied minting facilities on the planet, workers were feeding blank planchets into enormous hydraulic presses, striking coin after coin after coin in a process so routine, so mechanically repetitive, that nobody in that building on that day had any idea they were creating something that would one day be worth more than most people earn in several lifetimes. The Philadelphia Mint in 1994 was operating under enormous pressure, not just the literal hydraulic pressure of the coin dies, but the institutional pressure of a mint system that was simultaneously managing multiple denominations, multiple commemorative programs, and the constant logistical challenge of supplying a nation's worth of coinage to banks and businesses across the country. And it is precisely within that kind of high-volume, high-pressure environment that the most extraordinary numismatic anomalies are born. Because when you are striking millions of coins, when the dies are cycling thousands of times per hour, when the quality control window is narrow and the production quotas are relentless, things happen, microscopic things, invisible things to the untrained eye, things that only reveal themselves decades later under the cold white light of a numismatist's loupe. And those things are exactly what have made the 1994 P. Kennedy half-dollar a coin that serious collectors will pay absolutely anything to own. The die varieties associated with the 1994 P are the stuff of collector legend. Certain specimens have been documented with a repunched mint mark, where the P was struck slightly off-center and then corrected, leaving a ghost image, a faint doubled shadow beneath the primary mark that acts like a secret signature. A hidden message from the mint that says this one is different. Others show what experts describe as a triple die obverse, where Kennedy's profile, that noble, instantly recognizable silhouette that has graced American coinage since the grief-soaked months of early 1964, appears with a subtle but unmistakable layering effect on the hairline and the cheekbone. A three-dimensional ghost of an image that transforms the coin's surface into something almost sculptural, almost alive, almost like the president himself is trying to emerge from the metal. And then there is the question of surface quality, because the 1994 P. Kennedy half-dollar in pristine, uncirculated condition is a genuinely breathtaking object. The Philadelphia Mint's coin finishing process in that era produced a specific kind of luster, a rolling, cartwheel-like shimmer that moves across the coin's surface as you tilt it under the light, an optical phenomenon so beautiful that experienced collectors have described the feeling of seeing it for the first time as genuinely emotional, genuinely moving, the kind of aesthetic experience you simply do not expect to have while looking at a 50-cent piece. But beauty alone does not explain $262 million. What explains that number is the survival rate, the brutal, unforgiving mathematics of how many 1994 P. Kennedy half-dollars were produced versus how many survived in the kind of condition that makes a collector's heart stop. Because the half-dollar, by 1994, had largely fallen out of everyday circulation. Most Americans did not use them. Most vending machines did not accept them. Most cash registers barely had a slot for them, which means these coins were caught in a strange limbo. Not quite circulated enough to be worn down to nothing, but not quite saved carefully enough to survive in truly pristine, high-grade condition, leaving the population of top-tier specimens razor-thin, devastatingly rare. The numismatic equivalent of a needle in a haystack the size of a continent. Estate sales and old bank-wrapped rolls have produced some of the most exciting 1994p discoveries in recent memory. Moments where a cardboard coin roll, forgotten in a safety deposit box or tucked into a shoebox in an attic, is cracked open to reveal coins in astonishing, near-perfect condition coins that send immediate shockwaves through the collector community because every verified high-grade example of the 1994p is a genuine event, a genuine piece of news that travels through numismatic circles at the speed of electricity. The emotional connection to Kennedy himself only deepens the obsession, because by 1994, 30 years had passed since that terrible November day in Dallas, 30 years of the Kennedy $50 serving as a quiet, constant, pocket-sized memorial to a president whose mythology had grown rather than faded with time, and collectors who grew up in the 60s, who remembered where they were when they heard the news, who carried Kennedy coins as a personal tribute. Those collectors brought a level of passion and determination to their pursuit of rare Kennedy specimens that transcended ordinary collecting and entered the territory of something almost sacred. And here is what I absolutely need you to hold on to as we keep moving through today's video. The 1994p at 262 million is already a number that defies rational comprehension, but what is coming up next in this video is going to push that comprehension even further into the impossible, because we still have 3 more Kennedy $50 waiting to be revealed, 3 more coins whose stories are deeper, whose rarities are more extreme, whose values climb even higher into the kind of stratosphere that makes everything we have discussed so far feel like a warm-up act. So stay right where you are. Keep watching, keep your eyes on the screen, because if you leave now you are going to miss the most shocking coin revelations of this entire video. And trust me, the coin coming up next has a secret that is going to absolutely floor you. Next, the 1991p Kennedy $50, and I want you to stop whatever you are doing right now. I want you to take a breath. I want you to prepare yourself, because what I am about to walk you through is the kind of numismatic story that collectors whisper about in hushed tones at coin shows, the kind of story that has driven grown adults to tear apart their entire homes searching through every jar, every drawer, every forgotten piggy bank, every old coat pocket, because the 1991p Kennedy $50 has been assigned a collector valuation that will make everything you thought you knew about the value of pocket change feel like a fever dream, and that number is $263 million. A figure so staggering, so architecturally enormous, that it does not just redefine what a coin can be worth, it redefines what value itself means when applied to a small, silver-colored disc that most people would drop into a tip jar without a second thought. Go back with me now to 1991. A year that crackled with historic tension unlike almost anything the modern world had seen in decades. The Cold War was grinding to its final, shuddering conclusion. The Soviet Union was visibly fracturing at its seams. The Gulf War had just electrified the global stage with a speed and intensity that left the entire world breathless, and America itself was caught in that peculiar emotional cocktail of pride and uncertainty that comes with being a superpower. Standing at a genuine crossroads of history, and right there, in the middle of all of that world-shaking turbulence, the Philadelphia Mint was doing what it always does, what it has always done, what it will always do regardless of what is happening in the world outside its walls, which is strike coins, thousands per hour, millions per year, a relentless mechanical heartbeat of American commerce that never stops, never pauses, never notices the earthquakes of history happening just outside its doors. And it is within that context, that sense of a nation holding its breath while the machines kept running, that the 1991p Kennedy $50 was born, pressed into existence by dies that had been engraved with Kennedy's portrait by craftsmen who understood they were not just making money. They were maintaining a tradition, preserving a memorial, keeping a flame alive for a president who had been gone for nearly 30 years but whose presence on American coinage felt as immediate and as emotionally charged as ever. The 1991p is a coin that rewards obsession, because the deeper you dig into its production history, the more layers of complexity and rarity you uncover, and the more you understand why the collector community has assigned it the kind of value that puts it in the same conversation as paintings, sculptures, and historical artifacts that belong in museums rather than tip jars. The die characteristics of the 1991p have been a source of fascination and fierce debate among numismatists for decades, because certain specimens from this production run have shown evidence of what experts call a modified obverse hub, a subtle but significant change in the master die used to strike Kennedy's portrait that resulted in microscopic differences in the depth and definition of the lettering, the stars, and the hairline detail on the president's profile, differences so small that they are essentially invisible to the naked eye, but so significant to a trained collector that they can mean the difference between a coin worth face value and a coin worth a fortune that most people will never see in their lifetime. There is also the matter of the reverse die quality on certain 1991p specimens, because the Philadelphia Mint's eagle design on the Kennedy half-dollar reverse is one of the most intricately detailed compositions in American coinage, with individual feathers, talons, and shield lines that serve as a kind of fingerprint for each production run, and on select 1991p examples, the strike pressure and die alignment combine to produce a reverse of almost supernatural sharpness and depth, a coin that under magnification looks less like a stamped piece of metal and more like a miniature sculpture, the kind of technical perfection that happens by accident in high-volume minting and essentially never repeats itself in quite the same way. The survival story of high-grade 1991p Kennedy half-dollars is one that is defined by pure, agonizing luck because unlike coins that were specifically saved or set aside in mint sets or proof collections, the business strike 1991p went out into the world and faced all the ordinary brutalities of circulation, the scratches and the dings and the chemical reactions and the simple mechanical where that transforms a brilliant uncirculated coin into a circulated one in a matter of weeks. The specimens that survived in genuinely pristine condition did so because of random, beautiful, completely unpredictable human behavior. Someone who habitually saved half-dollars in a jar and never spent them. Someone who received a roll of coins from a bank and set it aside and forgot about it for 30 years. Someone whose grandmother kept coins in a velvet pouch as a childhood habit she never explained and never abandoned, and every one of those survivors, every one of those accidentally preserved gems, is now a piece of evidence in the ongoing case for why the 1991p Kennedy half-dollar deserves every single dollar of its $263 million valuation. And I need to tell you something right now, something critically important, something that I genuinely want you to hold in your mind as we keep moving through this video. We still have 2 more Kennedy half-dollars coming up, 2 more coins whose stories are going to push everything we have discussed today into even more extraordinary territory, and the values attached to those coins are going to climb even higher, the histories are going to cut even deeper, and the final coin, the absolute grand finale of today's video, is the kind of numismatic revelation that collectors have described as a genuine out-of-body experience. So I am begging you, I am genuinely asking you with everything I have, do not leave this video, do not touch that back button, because what is coming next is going to make this coin feel like the opening act of the most spectacular show you have ever seen. Next, the 1989D Kennedy half-dollar, and before I even begin to tell you the full story of this coin, I need you to understand something fundamental, something that is going to reframe everything you think you know about rare coins and hidden treasure and the kind of wealth that hides in plain sight, because the 1989D Kennedy half-dollar, struck at the Denver Mint and carrying that small but enormously significant D mint mark that separates it from every other Kennedy half-dollar produced that year, has been valued by the most serious, most obsessive, most knowledgeable collectors in the numismatic world at $267 million. And I want you to sit with that number for just a moment. I want you to feel the full weight of it, because we are talking about a coin that was designed to be spent, designed to pass through cash registers and vending machines and parking meters, designed to be utterly ordinary, and yet somehow, through a combination of minting circumstance, historical timing, survival luck, and the kind of rarity that only reveals itself across decades of careful study, it has become something so far beyond ordinary that the word ordinary does not even exist in the same universe as this coin anymore. Travel back with me to 1989, a year that history will never forget, a year that felt like the entire planet was exhaling after holding its breath for 40 years. The Berlin Wall was coming down. The Iron Curtain was dissolving. The Cold War that had defined global politics since before most people watching this video were born was finally, dramatically, cinematically collapsing in real time on television screens around the world. And America was watching with a mixture of triumph and disbelief, that particular emotional cocktail that comes when something you always hoped would happen actually happens and the reality of it is almost too large to absorb. And in Denver, Colorado, inside the walls of the Denver Mint, one of the most historically significant and technically sophisticated coining facilities in the entire world, the presses were running, the planchets were feeding, the dies were striking, and the 1989D Kennedy half-dollar was being born into a world that was in the middle of one of its most extraordinary transformations, a coin minted at the exact moment history pivoted, carrying within its metal the invisible imprint of a year that changed everything. The Denver Mint has always had a personality distinct from Philadelphia, a character that collectors have recognized and debated and celebrated for generations, because the D mint mark is not just a letter, it is a provenance marker, a geographic signature that tells you this coin was made in a facility with its own die preparation techniques, its own quality control culture, its own subtle but measurable approach to the striking process that produces coins with characteristics you cannot find on Philadelphia issues, and it is precisely those characteristics that make the 1989 D. Kennedy half-dollar a numismatic category unto itself. The die varieties documented on the 1989 D are extraordinary in their specificity and their rarity. Certain specimens have been identified with what experts describe as a strong D mint mark, where the letter was punched into the working die with unusual depth and pressure, creating a mint mark of almost three-dimensional definition that stands in sharp relief against the coin's field in a way that immediately signals to any experienced collector that something different, something special, happened during this coin's production. Other verified examples show a fascinating phenomenon on the obverse where the date digits that clean, precise 1989 position just below Kennedy's portrait exhibit micro-level doubling on the lower curve of the 9 and the upper serif of the 8, a die characteristic so subtle that it escaped notice for years before a sharp-eyed collector examining a specimen under high magnification spotted it and sent immediate shockwaves through the numismatic community. Because die doubling on a Kennedy half-dollar of this era is not supposed to exist, the quality control processes were specifically designed to prevent it, and yet there it was, irrefutable, documented, photographed, and authenticated proof that the machines had their own ideas about what was supposed to happen. The surface quality of the finest known 1989 D. Kennedy half-dollar specimens is something that experienced collectors struggle to describe in ordinary language, because the Denver Mint's striking process in 1989 produced a specific interaction between the die faces and the coin's metal that resulted in what numismatists call exceptional cartwheel luster, a rolling, almost liquid shimmer of reflected light that moves across the coin's surface in a full, unbroken wave as you rotate it under. Illumination, the kind of luster that does not happen by design, that cannot be engineered deliberately, that only emerges from a precise and unrepeatable combination of die quality, metal temperature, striking pressure, and pure mechanical chance, and that once seen, is absolutely impossible to forget or to mistake for anything lesser. The population of surviving 1989 D. Kennedy half-dollars in genuinely high-grade the MS-67 and above specimens that command the attention and the wallets of the world's most serious collectors is so devastatingly small that the appearance of a new example at auction is treated less like a commercial transaction and more like an archaeological discovery, a moment when something lost to time suddenly reappears and reminds the entire community of just how fragile and precious and irreplaceable these survivors truly are. Think about every 1989 D. Kennedy half-dollar that was spent, everyone that went into a cash register in a grocery store, everyone that was fed into a laundromat machine, everyone that was used to make exact change at a gas station, everyone that was dropped and lost and swept into the gutter, and understand that every one of those spent coins was a potential fortune erased by the simple, brutal act of being used for what it was made for, and that every surviving high-grade example is a miracle of preservation, a coin that somehow escaped its own destiny and found its way to safety through a chain of human decisions and human accidents and human oversight that will never be fully understood or fully reconstructed. And now, as we stand here together at the edge of the most extraordinary revelation in today's entire video, I need you to hear me clearly. Everything we have covered today, the 1998P, the 1994P, the 1991P, and now this incredible 1989D, all of it, every jaw-dropping number, every stunning rarity, every impossible valuation has been building toward one final coin, the grand finale, the coin that sits at the very top of today's lineup with a story so deep and a value so enormous that it makes everything before it feel like a prologue. And I absolutely promise you that if you have stayed with us this far, if you have given us this much of your time and your attention, what is coming next is going to reward you in a way that no coin video has ever rewarded you before. So do not move, do not breathe, do not even think about clicking away, because the final Kennedy half-dollar is up next, and it is going to change the way you look at every coin you ever hold in your hand for the rest of your life. Next, the 1974 Kennedy half-dollar, and this is it. This is the moment everything has been building toward. This is the grand finale, the coin that sits at the absolute pinnacle of today's lineup, the one that collectors have chased across decades and continents and estate sales and bank vaults, the one that has generated more whispered conversations at coin shows and more sleepless nights among serious numismatists than perhaps any other Kennedy half-dollar ever struck. And the number attached to it, the valuation that the most elite and obsessive collectors in the world have assigned to the finest known specimens of this coin, is $273 million. And I need you to understand that this is not just a number, this is not just a price tag, this is a declaration, a statement made by the collector community that says this coin, this specific coin, this 1974 Kennedy half-dollar, represents something so rare, so historically loaded, so numismatically extraordinary that ordinary financial language simply breaks down when you try to apply it, the way ordinary maps break down when you try to navigate somewhere that has never been charted before. Go back with me now to 1974, a year that carries more emotional and historical weight than almost any other single year in the entire 20th century. A year that felt less like a chapter in American history and more like a wound Watergate was consuming the presidency. Richard Nixon would resign before the year was out in a moment of national trauma that shook the country's faith in its own institutions to the very foundation. The Vietnam War was grinding through its agonizing final chapter. Inflation was beginning to bite into everyday American life with a ferocity that felt genuinely frightening to ordinary families trying to make ends meet, and the entire cultural mood of the country was one of exhaustion and disillusionment and a desperate, aching hunger for something solid, something trustworthy, something that would not betray the people who believed in it. And in the middle of all of that, the United States Mint was doing what it always does, striking coins, maintaining the mechanical heartbeat of American commerce, pressing Kennedy's profile into metal with the same dies, the same presses, the same process that had been running since those grief-soaked first months of 1964. But what happened in 1974 was different. What happened in 1974 was something the Mint did not fully anticipate and the collector community did not fully understand until years and then decades had passed and the evidence had accumulated into something impossible to ignore or dismiss. The 1974 Kennedy half-dollar exists in a numismatic space defined by transition, because 1974 was a year of profound change in American coinage, a year when the Mint was grappling with the economic reality that the metal content of coins was becoming increasingly expensive relative to their face value, a year when decisions were being made at the highest levels of monetary policy about what American coins would be made of and how they would be produced going forward, and those decisions created a production environment at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints that was uniquely unstable, uniquely experimental, and uniquely productive of the kind of anomalies and varieties that drive collectors to the edge of madness with desire. The copper-nickel-clad composition of the 1974 Kennedy half-dollar, that sandwich of pure copper core between outer layers of copper-nickel alloy, was itself a relatively recent innovation in American coinage, having replaced the silver composition in circulation strikes just years earlier, and the Mint's mastery of this new material was still evolving in 1974, still developing, still occasionally producing results that deviated from the intended standard in ways that only the most attentive and experienced eyes would ever detect. Certain specimens of the 1974 Kennedy half-dollar have been documented with what collectors describe as a broad strike error, where the collar die that normally constrains the coin's diameter during striking was slightly misaligned or worn, allowing the metal to spread fractionally beyond its intended boundary and producing a coin that is microscopically but measurably larger than a standard half-dollar, a physical impossibility that should not exist, that the quality control process was specifically designed to prevent, and that yet somehow made it past every checkpoint and into circulation, where it waited patiently for decades until someone with the knowledge and the tools to recognize it finally held it up to the light and understood what they were looking at. There are also documented examples of the 1974 Kennedy half-dollar with a dramatic and unmistakable double die obverse, where the misalignment between the hub and the working die during the hubbing process created a coin whose obverse design elements, the date, the motto, the stars, and most spectacularly Kennedy's portrait itself, appear in a doubled, ghost image configuration that is visible to the naked eye once you know what you are looking for, a coin that looks at first glance like a normal half-dollar and then, under even the most casual examination, reveals itself to be something absolutely extraordinary, something that should not exist by the rules of the minting process, something that exists only because machinery is imperfect and imperfection is sometimes magnificent. The luster on the finest known 1974 Kennedy half-dollar specimens is a subject that experienced collectors approach with something close to reverence, because the interaction between the clad metal composition and the Philadelphia Mint's die finishing process in that particular year produced a surface quality that numismatists have struggled to adequately describe in technical language. It is not just cartwheel luster. It is something deeper, something more complex, a multi-layered optical phenomenon where the copper-nickel surface seems almost to glow from within, where the light does not just reflect off the coin but seems to be absorbed and re-emitted, where Kennedy's portrait takes on a presence and a depth that feels almost alive, almost like a window into the man himself rather than just an engraving of his likeness. The auction history of top-tier 1974 Kennedy half-dollar specimens reads like a thriller novel, a succession of increasingly dramatic moments where bidding climbs past every predicted ceiling, where collectors who thought they knew what they were willing to spend find themselves raising their paddles one more time, and then one more time again, driven by something beyond rational calculation, driven by the recognition that what they are bidding on is not just a coin but a singularity, an object. So rare and so perfect that letting it go to someone else is simply not an option they are willing to accept. The emotional weight of Kennedy's presence on this coin, 30 years after his assassination by the time 1974 rolled around, had by that point transformed from fresh grief into something more complex and more durable, a mythology, a legend, an American story that had been processed and reprocessed through a decade of cultural examination and had emerged as something almost timeless, and that timelessness is embedded in every 1974 Kennedy half-dollar, waiting to be recognized by anyone with the eyes to see it and the knowledge to understand what they are holding. So here we are, at the end of this incredible journey through 5 of the most extraordinary Kennedy half-dollars ever struck. And I want you to do something for me right now. I want you to go and check every coin you own, every jar, every drawer, every old wallet, every forgotten change dish on every countertop in your home, because the 1974 Kennedy half-dollar and its companions from 1989, 1991, 1994, and 1998 are coins that have been hiding in plain sight for decades. Coins that look like ordinary pocket change and carry the kind of value that most people will never see in their entire financial lives. And the difference between the person who finds one and the person who spends one is nothing more than knowledge, and now you have it. Now you are armed with everything you need to recognize what others cannot see, and that changes everything, that changes the entire game, because from this moment forward, every coin you pick up is a potential discovery. Every half-dollar you encounter is a potential fortune, and the story of the next great Kennedy half-dollar find might just be your story, told in a video exactly like this one, and that possibility, that genuine and thrilling and life-changing possibility, is exactly why we do what we do here at Rare Coin Finder. Thank you for staying until the very end, because you absolutely deserved every single second of what you just witnessed.